About a month and a half ago, I was asked to sort of lead, more or less lead a memorial for an old friend in Calgary. She was a psychologist, and we had met probably in the late 80s sometime at some retreats, and she became interested in Buddhism, and then also began to teach retreats and to teach Dhamma. And actually, I think she had just that year concluded a year-long series of sort of seminars on metta, and she was keen to begin another year. So she had lots of reflections to offer about it. Partly with that in mind, but I certainly would have included this in that session with. I guess there were probably 60 or 80 people involved. So there are a lot of people who had been touched by her teaching and also moved by and who were reflecting on the fact that she died really quite suddenly, unexpectedly. And so it was quite a moving circumstance in many ways. Anyway, I kind of tailored a reflection on metta, which I had developed actually for my mother years before, after my mother had died. And so use this. And I thought I'd just read it out. I'm going to read it out in the first person, even though I was directing it towards our friend. And I'll read it out. I guess I won't read everything here, but just try to develop a sense of what it entailed. May I be well, peaceful, and happy. May I be free from all anxiety, confusion, frustration, and despair. May my heart and mind be unburdened and bright, confident and full of ease. May I have the understanding, courage, honesty, and goodwill to respond wisely to any challenges before me. May I never lack the encouragement and guidance of wise companions. May I perceive the luminous beings who care for me and be nourished by their love. May I continue to grow in virtue, kindness, and understanding. May the noblest aspirations of my heart be fulfilled. May I soon awaken to the selfless and radiant peace of the wise. So this reflection was developed, I think years ago. I heard Bhante Gunaratana's kind of approach to this and used part of it, and then it I had absorbed it for so long that I forgot that part of it came from Bhante Gunaratana, but much of this was, as I say, tailored originally with my mother in mind. And this is the way metta is usually taught in Western circles, I suppose. It's also true that metta, certainly the discourse on loving kindness that we just recited, this is one of the most famous Pali discourses. Certainly, it's chanted at any time of the day and night around the world, I think, and it has been for many, many centuries. So it has that quality to it. The value of the Metta Sutta is that it comes from the Buddha's own words. his own teachings. It reflects his own instructions on metta, and they are instructions. It's quite a systematic approach. And I think in anyone's practice, it's true to say that anything can become habitual, kind of routinized, and therefore we, as this occurs, we become less. We can become less present to what's occurring. And so one way to get around that, or to revitalize something like the Metta Sutta, if we become quite conversant with, repeating it, teaching, learning it, we've memorized it perhaps, and maybe we chant it once a day or something like that. One way of getting around that, or to revitalize it, as I say, is to slow it down. Actually, take each phrase slowly and just repeat it. This is what should be done. This is what should be done. So they are directions for practice by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. I've often been very moved just to reflect on a being who is skilled in goodness. It's quite a stunning sort of reflection in a way. What would it be? What would it require for a person to truly be skilled in goodness? So as you can probably see, even by this brief introduction, slowing it down and actually reflecting on each single phrase suddenly can bring the Metta Sutta kind of to life again, at least in the life of practice. So that's one approach. And then, as I say, developing our own kind of formula, you might say. So in the manner of that I just repeated from my own reflection for my old friend. This is another thing that can be done, and spending time with the words, and changing it as needed. Um, Eventually, of course, these things do become internalized so that we don't need to be actually resorting to a piece of paper in front of us. And so the occasion of the day might just spontaneously change some of the reflections that we offer. And if we have someone in mind, sometimes we're particularly moved by the plight of someone, and we want to formalize our generation of well-wishing for them. We might think in more directed terms of their predicament, their situation, and reflect in those ways. One thing to remember with the generation of metta and with the experience of metta is that the near attachment to metta is attachment. Might be lust, for instance. You're doing it for your boyfriend or your girlfriend or something like that, and so it can sort of generate. It can morph into something which has attachment entailed in it. You can ask then, what is the feeling tone which is developed in this? And I would suggest that warmth and spaciousness are typically associated with the brahmaviharas. Warmth and spaciousness. So the question that Janice was kind of posing, revolving around using metta as a samatha practice. That is, samatha is a word for stillness, for ease, for practices which develop. We use this word concentration, and I'm sure most Dhamma talks you've heard that use the word concentration will at least qualify it, because in fact, the word samadhi is usually the word that is translated as concentration. And in our culture, at the very least, in our culture, the idea of concentration is usually one which is associated with a lot of effort, furrowing of the brow, and really kind of gritting your teeth a bit. And there's tension in the body very often when you're told in grade 3 not to be daydreaming and to concentrate. It has that kind of quality that it can bring up old memories of what your mom or dad said when you were drifting off and not doing your work or something like that. Would you concentrate on what you're doing? You're forgetting what you're supposed to be doing here. That kind of effort, that kind of focused effort, really isn't what samadhi entails, or what the development of samatha, stillness, or calm entails, in fact. So the question is, how would metta, how could metta be fashioned in a way, or conceived in a way, framed in a way to work towards the cultivation of samatha, calm? Initially, the answer to that is quite simple, because, as I just suggested, when metta is kind of working, when, let's say, a formula that we've composed ourselves and just has become familiar to us, or when we're chanting the Metta Sutta in Pali, or when we're chanting the words of the Metta Sutta in English, whatever. When it's, as you might say, working for us, there is a sense of calm, which is naturally associated, I think, with loving kindness, spaciousness, ease, something like this. Therefore, it naturally lends itself, just because of its nature, to the cultivation of calm. When Janice kind of posed this question, asked whether I might want to consider it, she was aware that in the forest tradition, we take a little bit different attitude towards this, what is sometimes a bit of a controversy, or sometimes can be a little confusion within the meditating community, I would say, especially in the West, but not only in the West. That is the relationship between samatha and vipassana. Samatha and vipassana. So calm and vipassana, insight. Typically, this word vipassana means, or is translated as insight. What's the relation? Well, interestingly and importantly, the word Vipassana almost never comes up in the Pali literature, in the Pali canon, except that it is associated, or it is a kind of hyphenated word, you might say, with samatha. So samatha vipassana is a very, very common term, calm and insight, calm and insight. And perhaps probably with this in mind, and definitely with his own meditative experience, his prowess, Luang Por Chah often would say, well, you don't get one without the other. So when insight is being developed, it only is developed insofar as there is calm present. And when a state of calm is developing, the clarity of the mind is natural. It is naturally associated with mental calm, with the calm of the heart and mind. And so he would say, he used the example of a stick, but when you pick up this stick, you get both ends. So one side is samatha, one side is vipassana. However, the question of whether, to what degree and how metta can be used, well with a cultivation of calm. Um, you just need to ask yourself the question. Well, again, when metta is, I'll say, working, when I feel the development, the cultivation of metta, when I feel it arising, and it when there is this warmth, the warmth of a loving heart, there's no restriction. As it says in the Metta Sutta, it goes in all directions, whether beings are large or small, near or far, human or non-human, visible or invisible. It can be extended in all directions. So it is not it. One of the characteristics of all of the brahmaviharas is that they take us out of this experience of the bounded self, the constricted self. They immediately take one out of any experience of not having enough, feeling selfish, maybe feeling envious or jealous, discontent about something. They simply relax all of this. So the sense of being a self, being this needy person, this person bounded by this particular body, it relaxes, it softens. And so we experience the ease of this softening because there is a beautiful impersonality that develops. We are no longer this bounded self, which is needy and therefore craving and therefore suffering. Yeah. First and second noble truth. Suffering is caused by craving, ignorance. So when the experience of metta can be seen in this kind of light, it can be, you might say, the object. We simply allow the mind to rest on that. We bring the mind, the heart and mind to that space and just allow it to remain there. We're not trying to concentrate on it, you see, but we keep bringing it, rather like we keep bringing the attention to the rising and the falling of the breath in so much of the meditation practice that we're familiar with. So instead of returning the attention when sensory objects take us away or when thoughts begin to intrude, rather than bringing it back to the breathing, then in this case we're bringing it again and again to the experience of the spacious experience that metta provides, or which any of the other brahmaviharas provide. So the Buddha says that, in fact, the brahmaviharas can be used for the development of wisdom because they can develop such a powerful and calm mind can come out of this. So the clarity and the calm, Samatha Vipassana, which can arise, will arise in the when this is cultivated with skill, then that is put to work in view of one of the three characteristics. Because eventually, calm, this state of samatha, will come to an end. It will begin to fade. And with that fading, what is obvious, if the mind is primed, if we primed our attention in this way, we're seeing impermanence. Or when we find the intrusion of the world, you might say, on this beautiful state of calm, when we find it to be somewhat disagreeable, we're seeing suffering, we're seeing dukkha arise. So we're alert to one of the three characteristics. Or when we observe that even though there's this beautiful power and clarity of the mind which is being developed, when we see that nevertheless it changes and we have no control over this, it's out of our control. When we see this, the truth of anatta can be penetrated. So in this way, one or other of the three characteristics can actually arise as a subject of insight. So I'm speaking in somewhat technical terms, but this is the process as I understand it, and how regarding how it's described in the suttas as to how metta or one of the other brahmaviharas can be utilized. But I want to stress here that the final arising of insight, as I've described it very simply in 3 minutes, this is a beautiful but very deep and it's a spiritual accomplishment, and I've described it in terms of the actual arising of insight, and potentially, therefore, the arising of one of the path and fruit moments. So, sotapanna and so forth, stream entry. So that's kind of laid it out in simple terms like this. Our own capacity for calm at this level, and insight at this level may still be, in its early stages, in their early stages. Nevertheless, simply to know that there is a process available to us, to any human being with a heart and mind, and who is interested and capable of reining in their attention and gently bringing their attention back to some skillful object of meditation. This practice is available to anyone. And then we need to remember, and it's founded on the basis of virtue, because the Noble Eightfold Path, as we know, does develop only when there is sufficient virtue present, when there's a clarity of heart and mind due to our moral clarity, moral impeccability. So all of these things work together, they all work together. And I think it is very helpful to understand a seemingly simple practice like metta. As I said earlier, it can become routinized. Oh yeah, now it's another retreat, or we're gathering. Yes, we always do the metta sutta. Okay, let's begin. And this is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness, and you remember all the tones, and it can be very routinized like this, yeah. But remember, basically, nothing in Dhamma deserves to be taken for granted. It all stems out of the same root. The source code, the basic source code of Dhamma is awakening, is truth, is reality. So we need to, as practitioners, basically begin again and again. Be willing to, in Shunryu Suzuki's famous terms, to develop a beginner's mind. It's very important. And very important to be reminded of it and to remind ourselves of it, because it's so easy for something to become habitual. For the best of intention, I do it every day, so naturally it's a habit. Okay. Instead of thinking of it as a habit, maybe think of it as a ritual. Now, ritual is a term that we throw around, and of course, it doesn't have very good press in Western culture. But ritual, when, as I understand it, when it's being practiced and understood throughout time, it only works when it is brought to life in each new moment. It becomes new again. So it's ironically both very old and very new. So you do, you light the match, and you light the candle, 1, 2, 3 candles, and then you light the incense and you place the flowers, and all of this. anything which is done with deep mindfulness and loving attention can have this quality of ritual. So I'm only using it in that sense. And it simply means then that something that we've done maybe many, many times all of a sudden becomes new in that moment. Ritual it stems from the Sanskrit word verb, word rita, which means order, something like that. Has to do with, kind of cosmic order, or you might say reality. So, one way of looking at ritual is that when we have set the mind and heart in the right kind of way, and we enter into a kind of formal practice with that kind of attention and care, loving care, it makes of those simple movements a ritual. So rather than habit, maybe think of ritual. That's one way of framing it, just for now at least. So the cultivation of metta, loving kindness, in one sense, it's an antidote to ill will, to hatred. So that's what's called the far enemy. But the near enemy to metta is, as I say, kind of attachment, desire, that sort of thing. The other brahmaviharas, may have mentioned this before, but compassion, the far enemy of compassion is cruelty. So kind of not just being angry with somebody, but oh, geez, I hope they fail in their test. That sort of thing. Um, Maybe she'll just trip on that root and stub her toe. So serve her right. That sort of small-mindedness and something kind of cruel there. Compassion, though, takes us out of that and recognizes the commonality of suffering, human suffering, but not just human suffering, suffering of animals and so forth. The near enemy for compassion is grief. So it's pretty easy to get very upset by the suffering of others. Stories of war, of course, which we're very familiar with at the moment. They are very easy. It's very easy for grief to be generated by such the stories that we receive in the news, perhaps. But that isn't in these terms. It is not compassion. It does not have the warmth and spaciousness that the brahmaviharas offer. And so if you find yourself in grief, it isn't meant to be a rebuke. It's just a reminder, this is grief. It's not quite compassion here. How could I generate compassion in this case? Mudita, or appreciative joy. It's the far enemy of mudita, appreciative joy, would be jealousy, we'll say. The near enemy is something like discontent. Um, so just feeling like you don't have enough, just nothing's quite right. I thought that they're gonna give me a nice meal and it wasn't very nice, or I thought I'd do better in my test and I don't know why I didn't do very well, and just a sense of discontent, not being content in the moment. So mudita opens that up through the warmth and emptiness and the generosity of spirit by just by softening any concern with our own particular little needs and wants and wishes, and instead finds delight in the success of others, the happiness of others, the comfort of others, the safety of others, what have you. Just seeing a warm family embrace and how that can generate a feeling of pleasure in the heart. seeing an animal that's just well loved and cared for and fed and just enjoying its life, that also can bring real pleasure. Finally, equanimity. Every once in a while, my memory just kind of goes boop, and so right now I'm forgetting the near and far enemies to equanimity. Nevertheless, equanimity is a very spacious quality of the heart, and it is most associated, I would say, with wisdom. That is one way of conceiving or developing equanimity, is that whatever the situation we find ourselves in can be quite difficult and disagreeable. We might be the subject of sort of verbal attack or something like that. It's understanding that karma that karma is a great sort of determiner of experience, and that if we were, say, being wrongly attacked for some reason, not to worry, not to generate any sort of directed hostility towards or feel oppressed, but to allow that feeling of oppression to ease, just to the sense, I'm all of us are beings who are subject to suffering. Our bodies are subject to sickness, and finally, we are subject to death. We're all in this boat. There's no reason why I need to again particularize my experience and become, owing to that, a specific source of suffering, and to internalize and to personalize that, because in fact we're all in this condition together. So equanimity, that's one way, I suppose, of conceiving of the development of equanimity. But again, it offers it's a very sweeping sort of a view of the human condition, but one based on truth, one based on wisdom. So in fact, all of the brahmaviharas are, it is possible to use any of the brahmaviharas as a subject for samatha practice. So first of all, finding a path into it, and this for any of us, I think, is maybe can take years of practice, many lifetimes perhaps, doesn't really matter. Because the however successful we are, any success we have in this is good. It's a benefit. It's a beautiful thing to experience. And it partakes in wisdom to some degree. So we needn't judge ourselves as if we could on where we exist on the scale of awakening. That's not the point here. But I would suggest that actually using any of the brahmaviharas as as the object in samatha practice is a fairly, it takes a fair degree of refinement. But luckily, getting there is half the fun. Now I've got about 10 minutes maybe to go, and I think I'll leave my remarks at that, with my best wishes, and maybe we'll have a few minutes for follow-up questions if you like.
Handamayang Dhammakataya Sadhu Karang Dadamase Sadhu 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 Anumodami.
We've got somebody's hand up there. Is it Norman? You're on mute.
I found this a wonderful talk. I'll be studying this talk. The question, my teacher is a disciple of Arariva's Kema, was an eclectic teacher, and Ema's daughter-in-law, Melanie, said that at one point, that a way of knowing when you've really achieved metta is that there's a deep ache, a deep pain. I wonder if you could comment on that.
Can you just repeat the question again? I did. You were kind of going in and out for me, so I couldn't quite follow everything you said. Can you repeat the question, please?
One of my teachers said that a way of knowing when you are truly deeply in metta is that there's a deep ache, a deep pain. That's a signature that one's in the center of it.
Did you say that there's a deep ache or pain?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I think we can just test these things on ourselves. That isn't really my experience. But I realize that in asking the question, you've got to summarize what might be a very profound kind of some insights on it that this teacher might have provided. But I'll just say that's not what typifies it for me. So it's rather more in line of what I mentioned earlier a few times, just the warmth and spaciousness, the unconstrictedness, the that sense always of getting out of the way. All of a sudden, the sense of being a bounded self, the encumbrance of that has fallen away, and there's an openness of the heart towards this or that other being, or a whole range of beings. I mean, all beings in North America, whatever it is. So anyway, the spaciousness, warmth, ease is what I tend to think of more.
Thank you.
Barb has her hand up. Thank you. Barb?
Good morning, Ajahn. That talk was really important to me. I really, really enjoyed it and felt like I learned so much. But one of the things I wanted to ask you was that beautiful reading that you gave us that you had written for your mother. Was that was she dead when you had already written that? And could you send it to a dead person? And the same with practice, the merit of our practice. Can we send that to someone who has already passed?
We can certainly try, and it's a beautiful experience just to put effort in that direction. Unless we're maybe very psychic or have access to some Krubajahn who sees these things, we may not know if it reaches where we want. But the generation of these things and sending them in a selfless manner, may this, whatever merit is being generated through these words and my metaphor for this or that person, may this merit bring benefit to this person or to all beings. Yeah, these are, I think they're very healthy ideas to form, and ways of they're very skillful ways of generating some focus in the practice, and they're giving voice in a sense to that sense of being out of the way. This isn't about me. This isn't about me feeling better about myself, and I can, next time I have coffee with my friend, I can tell them how often I'm doing metta now, and how good I am at becoming at it. It isn't anything to do with this. It's just this free offering of kindness for other beings. I would say, I suppose in some technical terms, in view of the various stages of existence, where beings are understood to reside or end up, we'll say, after they die. It might have to, whether or not my mother received this, and yes, she had died at this time. My teacher in Thailand, Ajahn Chah, has suggested that I could help her. So I take it from his suggestion that that some of these things might have brought her some benefit. Imagine being in a state of confusion. I would expect, or I would imagine that there could be a certain amount of confusion surrounding the moments of death, the moments of dying. The body is behaving in unfamiliar and confusing and painful ways that we don't understand, and therefore the mind is perhaps in a state of confusion sometimes when death actually occurs. Not that our view of what a body is going through probably gives us a very good indication of what a mind is engaged in. That is as observers, but I'm just imagining that confusion might be part of things. So metta is a very unconfusing sort of quality. The brahmaviharas are states of clarity and calm. Yeah, we've come across that duo many times. There are states of clarity and calm, and in so doing, if we're generating it with some degree of you might say power, skillfulness, however, clarity, and if this can be received by the being in question, it seems to me that it could offer a great deal of solace and support, actually, bringing their heart and mind into some sort of clarity, and then whatever they need to be doing, whatever resources might be available to beings in that state, it might help further them into wherever they need to be going. I realize that the language around after death and the views around what happens after death are various, and of course, all of us probably by now have heard about and maybe listened to people's near-death experiences and that. So I don't want to intrude on particular views in this regard, but just going back to my earlier remarks, it makes sense to me that one of the things that could be prominent in a person's experience at death is confusion, maybe anger, maybe disappointment. Well, I've got some words here: anxiety, confusion, frustration, and despair. These are things, and disappointment, worry, any of these kinds of things I can imagine being somewhat preoccupied with in the state after they've passed. So just touching base with those things and giving them voice, and then wishing that these things become clear, and wishing that there is a kind of strength of being to begin to emerge out of this, feeling the loving kindness that is being generated towards them. I mean, these just seem to be very healthy, wholesome, beneficial states of mind. If they never benefited the person in question, they will benefit us. And I think we all know, with that said, that I'm sure we've all been around someone who has just exuded a great deal of benevolence, of kindness, and what have you. They walk into the room or they make some short, brief remark in the middle of an argument, and it just sort of dispels the whole tone and the friction in the air. We know what it's like to be affected, in other words, by another person's benign presence. Well, so if it works for someone in the room, maybe sometimes it works for people at a distance too. Why not? This, I think, depends on the power of people's mind. And if you want to know how to develop a strong mind, a strong heart and mind, it's through the clarity that comes from meditation. This is the way of doing it. And so the more powerful to use that word, a meditation that can become, the more benefit we can bring to others and to ourselves.
That was very helpful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ajahn Pavaro, I noticed we've got one more hand up in the group that's meeting in person, but I think we've run out of time.
Well, let's hear what the question is.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Ajahn Pavaro, for the talk and for being willing to consider a last question. The question is about practicing with metta and the brahmaviharas. So I found in my own practice, my mind can kind of go in two directions. So in one way, it kind of going more inwards and giving my mind and heart a little nudge towards metta or whichever when I'm practicing with. And sometimes it's kind of more like tuning into something that's kind of exists independently of me, like that there is, for lack of better words, kind of a realm of metta that I'm kind of tuning into and participating in. And I was just wondering whether both of those kind of methods of practice are valid, or there should be one that I should be kind of cultivating more than the other.
Tim, I think I don't. Can you go through that second category again? I may not have a full enough understanding of it yet.
It's kind of just a sense that metta exists independently of me, and that my heart is kind of tuning into that and kind of participating in that kind of independent.
Good.
Generating it.
So I think both of those things, and I wouldn't, maybe I'd suggest, maybe it's what you're doing anyway, is just if the mind is inclining to one or other, don't worry about trying to cover both or something. Don't make a project out of it and see that you have to do each. But yeah, I mean, I can see how reflecting in either of those ways is beneficial, and I'm expecting from the way you say that you've laid that out that you feel the benefit of both. And if you're feeling the benefit of both, and in particular when that benefit isn't owing to the fact that it that it has to do anything to do with self-aggrandizement, obviously the self is out of the way to a large extent in these cases, and so that in itself is a good I think measure of their benefit. So now I guess I should go.
Okay.
Yeah, very, very lovely to be with you all again.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And for me, it was a very profound talk. I just got so much out of it, and I will be listening to it again. Thank you. And maybe our community can bow 3 times to show our gratitude and respects. Thank you very much.
Suki Hotu. Suki Hotu means may you be happy. So what better blessing? Suki Hotu. Okay, be well, and best wishes with the rest of your session.
Yeah.